If we could start with Andrew Cuomo. What is your reaction to this latest development with multiple women now accusing him of sexual harassment?
To me, this feels like the final death blow. This is going to be the death knell, I think, to the remainder of his time in office. He deserves due process, and we'll see how, these are just allegations at this point that he's denied. We'll see how the process plays out. But I just think he's been so hobbled by, frankly, Janice Dean and the nursing home scandal, which is just disgusting. And not to make light of these allegations, these Me Too allegations, but the guy is accused of, issuing an order that directly or indirectly led to the death of 15,000 seniors. Why that wasn't enough for people to form commissions and get rid of him, I don't know. But now we've got these two latest allegations, and I think what we're learning is the Democrats in this state hate him. No one's defending him. They're all piling on independent investigation. And that's the problem. When you have no allies and something like this drops, number one, nobody stands by you. And number two, they see an opportunity. These Democrats who may have been tied to whatever corruption may have been involved in this nursing home decision, that's all still being investigated. They probably are like, this is our chance. Get rid of the guy. Based on Me Too allegations, we don't have to look into corruption or why the nursing homes made more sense than some other facility, what kind of kickbacks the state may have gotten from the nursing home, whatever. We'll see where that goes. And I think they're like, this is the perfect opportunity to cut bait.
Yeah, it does seem like you need to have both of these things. If you're a conservative and someone makes an allegation, usually that's enough for the media to sort of align on a narrative like this. But with Cuomo being a Democrat, you need to have other Democrats against him, and you need to have that sort of I think there's an element here where they praised him for so long over the COVID thing. It's difficult for them to admit they got that wrong. They almost needed another reason to come up so that they could act as if this was the reason they were turning on him.
That's a good point. You're right about that. And, he's been on this leadership tour. Let me tell you how I saved everybody with so little pushback, Stu. As you know, you've been covering this. You've been doing a great job. But, all they did was lionize him when he went into every newsroom and barely, if ever, pushed back and asked questions about this. So, yes, they're embarrassed. They'd much rather see him leave on a Me Too situation. But I don't know. The media, too, is hypocritical, right? Because all these politicians who are running out, and once again, we're back to believe women. It's like, well, I interviewed Tara Reid this time last year, and you were not saying the same thing about her. So, pick a lane. Either we're going to have due process or we're going to believe all women, but both of those things are not possible.
Cuomo himself was basically on the believe all women thing, and now he's back and forth releasing 10, 12 statements a day trying to figure out how he can get himself out of that.
He's a hot mess right now in his statements. Here's a note to all you men out there. If you ever get accused of sexual harassment, this is free, okay? I used to practice law, and I've been involved in the Me Too situation. It's free advice for you. Don't say, I thought it was playful. No, right? He's a hot mess at the moment. But his comments on Brett Kavanaugh, he completely rushed to judgment against him and was saying he's disgusting, and the administration, the way they diminish women from the beginning are disgusting, and women should be respected. It's like, all right. Yeah, just save it.
It is. It's very difficult to watch. I want to go back to, you talked about your Tara Reid interview, and you did something that the rest of the media completely avoided, which was take her seriously. Take her accusation as a serious accusation and try to get to the bottom of it and talk to her about it. And it struck me as I was watching this that we all sort of internalize these conversations in a somewhat selfish way. At least I do, I guess, and I think most people do, in that, I think about what the political ramifications are. I think about what politician I might not like their policy, what's going to happen to them. But there's a real person here. Tara Reid is an example of it. The people who are accusing Cuomo are an example of it. And it must be very difficult for them to go through this when everyone is basically using you as some sort of political hammer.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure these women are aware of that. I'm sure, I don't know how they feel. I think from reading their statements, they feel angry at him for what was done to their careers. I think it's probably tougher when you still have an affection for the boss, because just because somebody harasses you doesn't mean you loathe him. Frankly, that was my own situation. Mm-hmm. And I really had no desire to stick the knife in, none at all. But it had to be done because the question was asked directly and I wasn't going to lie. These women are definitely getting used by the political establishment. And look, as I said with Tara, if the shoe were on the other foot, they'd be doing just the same the other way. Like, oh, I don't believe her. Tara Reade had her life ripped apart. Half the country still thinks she made up the fact that she graduated from college and lied about her credentials and testifying in domestic violence cases, which isn't true. That all played out in her favor. Did you see that everywhere in the newspapers? No. They just tore her life apart, brought up her bankruptcies and the fact that she had difficulty paying her bills, and said she's a liar. Even though Tara Reade told somebody contemporaneously when this allegedly happened 30 years ago that it did. That she established. That it actually happened, I don't know. But I'm telling you, she established that contemporaneously with the alleged event, she told more than one person about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was on record. I mean, even the Larry King situation, the video that popped up really seemed to confirm that something was going on at the time. With the media in general, because CNN I think is the most guilty of this right now, and I find CNN and MSNBC to be competing for this often, but MSNBC seems to usually be the more directly partisan thing, at least up until the Trump era. At this point, it almost seems to have switched, and the idea that CNN is really not covering these new accusations all that much, particularly Chris Cuomo is not covering them. Is there any surprise? I mean, should I just stop should I delete the possibility of being surprised by how bad the media is at this point?
I think so. Yeah, they're lost. They're a lost cause. There's no one left to root for, basically. We got to forge on without them. They're no good to us anymore. I had Janice Dean on my podcast today. We taped it today and it airs on Wednesday. And she was saying that she thinks Chris Cuomo should be benched right now. And she had a good point. Yeah. How are they going to let him go out there and cover the news without touching on this? They already blew it when Lindsey Boylan came out with her accusations. It wasn't on ABC, NBC, or CBS. Chris Cuomo certainly didn't report about it. And now the CNN bent its rules to let Chris Cuomo report on his brother, right? Let his brother come on for those softball, ridiculous comedy interviews. Now the brother's in trouble, the governor, in serious trouble. They won't let him interview me. And it's like, oh, no, the policy's back in place. So now Chris Cuomo gets to not report on any of his own malfeasance, his brother's malfeasance. And you tell me, how's Chris Cuomo going to go out there and fairly report on Governor Ron DeSantis, right, down in Florida, or any of the other governors, Governor Newsom, and their COVID problems, without being able to mention just that one very famous governor who he tried to endear to America with only stupid jokes and no hard questions when thousands had already died in the New York nursing homes.
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely unbelievable, especially considering not only was it in the middle of the worst part of the pandemic, where I believe Cuomo was failing in a unique way across the country. I mean, he was not just a lot of governors did a lot of things that they would like to take back. Cuomo went way over that line, and that was in the middle of that. No hard questions, nothing but fluff and nonsense. And I don't see how you can. It's like there almost needs to be this sort of situation where he is benched because he is incapable of covering these things, and it's impossible to ignore. The man's name is the same name. We all know they're related. We all know he's been a cheerleader this whole time, and to just let him off with this idea that he can just kind of not comment on it it's certainly not journalism, is it, Megyn?
No, it's not. It's disgraceful. And you know what? The media's behavior all along has been disgraceful. You've been doing a great job in this. Janice, the meteorologist at Fox News, has been doing a great job because both of her in-laws were killed in the nursing homes after this order was issued. And then you got this Ron Kim, this Democrat in New York State, who's been really honest about this problem. His uncle was killed in the New York nursing homes. It shouldn't take a personal death in the family to get some honesty out of these partisans and these media people. It shouldn't have been up to Janice Dean, the meteorologist, to push this story. Cuomo was on with Nicole Wallace. They still bill her as a Republican. It's such a joke, Stu. Right? Like, she's a Republican the way Jennifer Rubin of the Washington Post is a Republican. So she had Cuomo on at the end of January, recently, well after the scandal had broken and we knew he was being accused of all this stuff. There was no pushback on him. And he then said, he took it upon himself to say, incompetent government kills people. He was talking about Trump. She didn't even take the moment to say, oh, preacher, heal thyself, right? Like, funny you should bring that up, Governor, because that's what the people in New York State say you did when you issued that order that the New York State nursing homes had to take COVID-positive patients into them. And thereafter, thousands of people died. Talk about whipping on a softball. Why didn't she ask it? Because she didn't want to. So you don't actually have to share a last name with the guy to be in the tank for him. And that's what we saw with her and with too many other journalists over the past 11 months.